The Rust language is fast becoming a place to build cross-platform apps through a variety of libraries. Many such tools use a web-based front end, since that's a truly universal way to create a UI. A relatively new library in this space is Dioxus, which lets you build apps for web, desktop, and mobile, all with a single codebase written in Rust. Let's take a look at Dioxus in action. I have here an example app that lets you create a collection of counters, which you can ramp up or down with a click, and which you can add or remove counters from with clicks as well. And the way Dioxus implements this is with code to create HTML dynamically via special code elements in Rust. By the way, the version of the app that I'm demonstrating here has been built as a native Windows desktop application, but we could just as easily deploy this in the web or on iOS or Android or what have you. So this app function in our code sets up all of our controls for the UI. It only gets called once though. It's not an actual rendering loop. We'll go into that a little bit later. All of the behaviors for our app are declarative. We describe in advance what everything is going to do. So at the top here, we set up first a vector, which will contain our counter's values. And we make it accessible to the Dioxus app's controls with a function named useSignal. Now this mechanism is, as the name might imply, how we pass signals around generally inside the app and how we manage state generally. The sum variable, which tracks the sum of all of the counters, makes use of another powerful Dioxus feature called useMemo. What useMemo does is it takes a closure, this expression here, and re-executes it every time some dependency inside the closure changes. So in this case, every time counters changes in any way, like if we add or mutate an element, useMemo will run and sum will get recomputed. So this is a convenient declarative way to trigger the recomputation of sum automatically without having to manually call a function every time we want to do that. This macro here, RSX, this contains all of the elements that will be used to generate our UI. This is the part that does get rerun every time some action gets triggered to re-render everything. So you'll notice that many of the elements are reminiscent enough of HTML to be pretty easy to parse at a glance, like the way an image link would work. Now, when we want to wire up controls like these buttons, we give them an onClick method, which alters the counters object, and then will then re-trigger sum for each change, as we noted earlier. To display all the counters, we loop through them and dynamically construct them, each one with their own events for onInput and onClick. Again, those modify the counters object and they will re-trigger a recalculation of sum. So this example should give you some flavor for how the UI is rendered in Dioxus and how state gets passed around and handled. Now I've mentioned elsewhere another cross-platform framework called Tauri, which can also work with Rust. And one chief difference between Dioxus and Tauri is how HTML is handled. In Tauri, you can use HTML directly. It's a little bit more like a web framework that just uses templates. In Dioxus, there is this custom RSX code format. It's reminiscent enough of HTML you can guess at a glance what it's doing, but if you're using existing HTML in a Dioxus project, you have to convert it to RSX. Now, there is an included tool, DXTranslate, to help you do this, but it's important to factor in how using RSX to handle HTML is going to impact your project workflow. It's not trivial. So to sum up, Dioxus is still very new. It's only in version 0.6 so far, but it's solid enough that we can see how it works. It uses a declarative approach to making cross-platform apps. You use code to describe your UI layout and its behaviors, and while that means you can't use existing HTML as is, the resulting code is not that hard to parse, and you can deploy to all major platforms with no additional tooling. So that's it for this episode. If you liked it, leave a comment below, and don't forget to follow Dev with Serdar and InfoWorld on Facebook, YouTube, and InfoWorld.com.